The spring of 2020 will always be a special year in my life. My then girlfriend, now wife, and I were in a newly christened relationship, and news of the world shutting down due to the pandemic hit like lightning. For the next year, I and everyone else grasped for new hobbies, shows, sports, and really anything that could distract us from the growing death and infection tolls and the confusingly bleak stories that poured out from the news. Television was really big for me at this time, and it offered a shared space to facilitate discussion with those who I could regularly gather with. The fall of 2021 brought about a show that I didn't even realize that I had been waiting for. Horror has long been a point of contention in the Christian community, myself included. And with some people believing that horror films are completely antithetical to the Spirit of God, and others feeling that it's perfectly fine to watch whatever film. Personally, I think that there's a richness to some horrors and thrillers, and I want to emphasize that some. There's a certain kind of epiphany and maybe even clarity, I can say, that comes from a moment of catharsis. The blending of your mind being sharpened being pumped with adrenaline and all these things, and the deep, just bodily emotionality that you feel, I think offers a unique perspective in that moment. I would describe it a bit like real-time hindsight. Obviously, as a religious person, my tastes are pretty specific when it comes to horror. I like things that deal with existential questions and religious questions. That's why this show, Midnight Mass, directed by Mike Flanagan, is such a home run for me. IMDb has a description of it that's really simple. It's a 7-part limited series, and all IMDb says is, quote, "An isolated island community experiences miraculous events and frightening omens after the arrival of a charismatic, mysterious young priest," unquote. Just one relatively long sentence is the summation that IMDb has for the show's basic premise. And to be fair, it does a pretty good job, but this show is a bit like the book of John to me. It can be as shallow or as deep as you're willing to look. I don't really have time to look through every nook and cranny available here, but I do want to do my best in the time that we have to give this narrative and some of its themes that it covers a fair shake. For people who detract from the series, it has long stretches of monologues and dialogues, and they're seen as points of boredom, places where the series just grinds to a halt. But I tend to very much disagree with this view, and I think it's viewing things all wrong. There's no story without people. People are the ones who drive hope and horror in this series, and I would contend in any story. There is a monster here, but the monster is only real and scary in as much as it affects these characters that we've come to cherish. Our story starts and follows a young man named Riley Flynn, a man who left the small northeastern island community of his youth to chase money and the high life, very much akin to the prodigal son. Unfortunately, he also discovered alcohol while he was away. And one night, while he was on a bender, he was in an accident and unfortunately killed a young woman. While he was being arrested, he was just incessantly praying the Lord's Prayer. And I think this works on a couple levels. The Lord's Prayer is situated in the first little section of Matthew, or a particularly important section of Matthew known as the Sermon on the Mount. This is the single largest block of teachings in the New Testament of Jesus. This is the way that he says that we should pray. Now, regardless of the depths that you could go into with the Lord's Prayer, this works as a way of establishing the religiosity of Riley. The Lord's Prayer is seen very much as a Catholic thing. It's a thing that they repeat verbatim. Some Protestants do this as well, but less so. And it's not seen as a tenet or not nearly as important to quote verbatim. And this works because it has a negative stereotype as being a faith where you can just do whatever you want, and as long as you say a certain prayer and do confession or follow some certain steps, you'll be okay. And that's the kind of person that Riley is. He is staring at the body of someone that was killed due to his irresponsibility and his addiction. And his response is to just keep reciting this prayer over and over again in an attempt to clear his own conscience, is really what it is. After his sentencing and serving some time, he's released on parole due to good behavior. With his career gone and nowhere else to go, he packs up and heads home, back to his hometown, his home island of Crockett Island, also known as the Crockpot. It's revealed to his family that he's no longer a Catholic in a particularly tense dinner scene. And in fact, he's not just not Catholic. He is an atheist now. He says to his dad that it's just not him. It's just not what he does anymore. The Crockpot is not a particularly vibrant community, but it once was. It was a very full, strong fishing community. But in recent years, they experienced an oil spill, and the subsequent lobbying from environmental groups was actually used to tighten restrictions on the inhabitants of the island so that they can no longer fish the way that they once could. And this puts an extra financial strain on them outside of just the decreased population of fish. With a heavy hope that is only really possible, I think, in religious circles, some of the community members continue to faithfully attend Mass on Sunday, and a select few of them actually attend every single day. Among those that attend every single day are some names that you should try to remember. That being Beverly Keene, Lisa Scarborough, and Annie Flynn. Opposite our protagonist, Riley Flynn, rests Father Paul, the charismatic young priest, if you remember the IMDb description. This new priest is sent to the town, and what he says is he's a replacement for their previous priest, known as Monsignor Pruitt. His knowledge and his real genuine care for the people of the Crockpot is oddly contagious. He is passionate. He knows everyone by name. He knows their stories. And he seems to care in a way that is particularly refreshing to the people of the Crockpot. And pretty immediately, he makes a really positive impression on everyone who runs across him, and especially those who are already bought in, that group that is attending Mass regularly. and a couple others, but we'll get into them. Those who are on the outside and a little more skeptical of the whole Catholic thing, they continue to be pretty skeptical of this guy. And they have good reason. The show, over its 7 episodes, really drip feeds you an explanation of who Father Paul is and how he has this depth of knowledge and why he's acting so strange. But we don't have that kind of time here, so I'm going to spoil it. Father Paul is actually the same Monsur Pruitt that left Crockpot Island not too long ago. Because he was advanced in age and presumably had dementia or some other kind of degenerative mental illness, they wanted to send him to the Holy Land before he passed. And so they scrounged money together and they sent him to Israel. While on that trip, Monsur Pruitt stumbled away from the group that he was supposed to be with and found himself in the desert. And a storm hit, and he walked through best he could, finding shelter, and he found a cave. And in the cave, he thought he was alone until he lit a match, and a really terrifying creature appeared in front of him and immediately attacked him. It began to suck the blood out of his neck, killing him. But in a state of confusion and in a state of panic, as he died and wasn't quite sure what he was seeing, Monsur Pruitt just began to say, "Oh, angel, angel, angel." He thought he was seeing an angel, and realizing that this guy had to come from somewhere. This creature feeds Monsur Pruitt its own blood. And when he wakes up, he realizes that he's been restored to his prime physical age and stature. I should say that I might say angel sometimes, and I might say monster sometimes, or vampire other times. This monster is 100% a vampire. There is no switch up that happens in the show where it really is an angel or anything like that, and it tries to make some commentary about, how God and angels are really evil. That's not this kind of show. This is 100% a vampire. And the vampire was right. Monsur Pruitt puts it in a crate and ships it back with him to the crockpot. The longer Father Paul is in town, though, it seems that strange phenomena are just taking place. Remember Lisa Scarborough. Lisa, who attends Mass every day, is paralyzed from the waist down. She can't feel anything. She can't walk. One day, in a particularly tense scene, Father Paul beckons her to come and get her communion. And while she keeps trying to wheel toward him in her electric wheelchair, he keeps stepping back and isn't allowing her to take her communion the way that she normally does. In fact, he actually steps back up the stairs, much to the chagrin of Lisa's mother and father. Her father, by the way, is mayor of the town. But when he does that, Lisa believes him. And she gets up and she really does walk. And it's a bona fide miracle. At least to the townspeople it is. And they haven't had good news like that in a very, very long time. So they cling to it. And they cling to anything else that comes as a result of what Father Paul could do. In a sense, the things that go on the island really are miracles. And they really are things that the people needed to experience. Lisa, who was paralyzed due to the town drunk shooting her during a hunting accident, upon being able to walk again, is able to fully realize the forgiveness that she had so long suffered with, contended with. And then maybe one of the most emotional scenes and bit of character acting that I've seen in my life, she goes to his house, his RV, I guess I should say, and she's able to forgive him. And it's a beautiful scene, and it's a scene that is celebrated in the context of the show. And I think that's one of the things that draws me to this show. It is not negative on religiosity, but what the show does deal with, in a way of weaving in and out with this monster and these miracles and down to details that I really won't, I might just mention offhandedly, but there's no way to really fully get it without watching it, or if I really walked through every episode. But there is this unfolding of exponential growth as far as the religious fervor of this town. As soon as Father Paul touches down, and really as soon as Lisa is healed, and I'm saying that in quotes, the religious intensity of the town just ramps up. And that really leads to one of the major points of Midnight Mass. And the point that I think I wrestled with the most and disagree with the most, oddly enough. And that's the idea of religious fanaticism. To Mike Flanagan and to, I'm sure, a lot of people who are not religious, their view on people who are too serious about their faith is maybe people who are stuffy or judgmental or, you name it. It is not seen as a good thing. And while it's not necessarily said that plainly, there is a sense in which fanaticism is the monster of this show. In fact, I would argue, and will in here, that the monster, the vampire, is working as a way of showing how we as people are infected with fanaticism and what that does to us individually and what that does to us collectively and the decisions that we have to make and deal with the consequences of as a result of that. I think a brief pause here would be good to explain one character in this show that's a character but isn't really a character, and explore maybe why it was chosen this way. And I think that's the vampire. I think choosing a vampire is a bit odd in some ways, or at least you can feel that way. They're one of, if not the, outside of maybe zombies, the most famous kind of monster in the world. Their ideas and iconography and writings about them have existed for thousands of years, legitimately thousands of years. And they've taken on a number of different forms in our pop culture. They range anywhere from these gargoyle-like creatures, which is more what this one is in Midnight Mass, though it is intelligent, to, Twilight. Twilight was huge when I was coming up. They're glittery and super charismatic, and they can have kids, and they just want to live, and there's different factions and all these different things in Twilight. But in Midnight Mass, the monster takes on, I would say, a more esoteric kind of quality. It does have intentions, like when it fed Monsignor Pruitt its blood so that it could be brought back to whatever community he was from. But it also just kind of acts out of instinct. It's a strange mix of this primal act and what seems like intelligence. I would liken it to a virus. I'm willing to bet that's how Mike Flanagan is trying to present fanaticism here as well. It infects us and changes us. Our bodies have to react and respond to it. Unlike a virus like the flu, where I have to lay in bed for a week and eat crackers and soup and drink Canada Dry ginger ale, this one offers us something in exchange. And that is where our choice lies. It would be harder to say I didn't want the flu if the flu made me feel the best I have ever felt. It would be harder to say I don't want the flu if the flu could make sure that I would always be around and would make sure that all the people that I loved would always be around as well. Of course, there's trade-offs. You're still sick. In this case, while you won't die of natural causes, you will die if you're in the sun. And you have these cravings that you didn't have before. You make decisions that you would never have made before out of this, again, primal kind of drive. Fanaticism, to Mike Flanagan and to those in Midnight Mass, is something that begins with an individual. Monsignor Pruitt, at the end of the show, reveals that he really just wanted to bring this vampire to the town and make everyone well because he loved one woman and wanted to make sure that they could do their lives over again and spend their lives with each other. The whole time he was espousing all this biblical rhetoric, sermon after sermon, monologue after monologue, of how this was truly an angel of the Lord. In the time of revelation, a new covenant was being fulfilled and established. But in reality, he couldn't admit it until everything had gone wrong. But he was just selfish. It felt good, and he wanted to keep feeling good with the people that he loved. If this monster is fanaticism, what then is Midnight Mass trying to say to us and teach us about this creature that we all face? I think we can see that best through examining the reactions and encounters of a few specific moments of a few specific characters. It's really kind of obvious, but important to stress nonetheless that this is taking place inside an already religious conversation, particularly Christianity, and that's what I am. So that's what I'm going to couch this conversation in. The conversation of fanaticism and how we react and what responsibility we have lies within the context of what you already believe religiously and what temperament you already have. I had a whole thing kind of planned out on how I wanted to conceptualize these different people and these different groups of people within certain groups and factions and all these different things that take place. You'll have to bear with me, though, because I feel as though there is a better, perhaps more biblical way to approach this idea of fanaticism in a way that is more helpful in real life than just talking about than only talking about this show. And what comes to mind is the parable of the sower. The parable of the sower is one of Jesus' more famous parables. For those who know it or don't know it or forgot it or can't really think of it right now, there's about 4 types of soil that Jesus talks through. Matter of fact, I'm going to just read it. It's in Matthew 13, and I'm starting from verse 18. He says, "Listen then to the parable of the sower. When anyone hears the word of the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what has been sown in his heart. This is the one sown with seed beside the road. The one sown with seed on the rocky places, this is the one who hears the word and immediately receives it with joy. Yet he has no firm root in himself, but is only temporary. And when affliction or persecution occurs because of the word, immediately he falls away. And the one sown with seed among the thorns, this is the one who hears the word, and the anxiety of the world and the deceitfulness of wealth choke the word, and it becomes unfruitful. But the one sown with seed on the good soil, this is the one who hears the word and understands it. He who indeed bears fruit and produces, some 100, some 60, and some 30 times as much. Jesus is talking about our heart condition. And the seed is the word of God that has been given to us already. I disagree with the idea that proper fervor, when directed to the things of God and the person of God, is incorrect. But I do think we need to examine and can maybe understand the effects of a virus like ill-placed fanaticism better when we try to examine the positioning of our heart. First, Jesus talks about the one who does not understand it. The evil one comes and snatches away what has been sown in his heart. This is the one sown with seed beside the road. There's a couple people in Midnight Mass who really just don't believe. Most of them are faceless, but the one who is thankfully a part of our main supporting cast is Hassan, the sheriff of Crockpot Island. And Hassan is Muslim, and he's there with his son. His wife, he gives an explanation. His wife died of pancreatic cancer in a pretty drawn out and tragic way. And that has really shaped a lot of how he views God. As a Muslim, he states himself, and many Muslims have done this. He studied the Word, he studied the Bible, and has come to his own conclusions. He never really comes to a point of wanting to understand, of really understanding how God could do certain things. Particularly in his life, the case of his wife, and the case of some miracles happening to some people and some not happening to others. In particular, in the context of the show, Lisa Scarborough, I mean, it was unavoidable, the fact that she really can walk now. She really was healed. A miracle really did occur. And as best anyone could provide, it was a bona fide miracle from God. And to Hassan, he has to reject this because his wife was the absolute nicest person possible. She was one of the best people possible. He converted to Islam because of her, actually. And the abuse that he has suffered at the hands of life and the marginalization that he suffered at the hands of the people of the island that he's there to protect doesn't let him really believe what the Bible has to say. He's not bought into Mass. He's not bought into Christianity. In fact, when his son tries to convert, he can't handle it. He's heartbroken. Fanaticism, in this case, the monster, was really what was trying to get to him. And that's what he was rejecting. Something felt off to him because that's not how God works. At least that's what he would say. He doesn't heal some people and not heal others. He's not involved like that. He could not accept. He could not understand how God could work in that way. And the reason that I put him in this category, even though we're dealing with a monster, is because his heart positioning was already this way. And the thing that he was really missing wasn't the miracles. He didn't need those. He didn't want those in particular. What he wanted was peace. What he wanted was the joy that comes with a knowledge and understanding of Christ. And what he was met with instead was really selfishness and greed disguised as the gospel. And he could not take that. That informed every decision that he made. And I'm glad he had the wherewithal. Again, Mike Flanagan is very respectful of religions. He had the wherewithal to reject whatever it was that was going on this island. And a lot of people, in fact, really reject what's going on this island. The second group that Jesus talks about, the second heart posture that he talks about, is the one sown with seed on the rocky places. He says, this is the one who hears the word and immediately receives it with joy, yet he has no firm root in himself, but is only temporary. And when affliction or persecution occur because of the word, immediately he falls away. So again, this is not talking about true gospel, so that there's some differences here. But I mentioned Hassan's son in the previous section, and his son converts in a scene that is a true bit of what I would call and consider religious horror. In order to fully awaken as a vampire, honestly, what they feel as this kind of glorified body, in order to really awaken as a vampire, you have to die after consuming a certain amount of this vampire's blood, or someone who has become a vampire's blood. And the way that they accomplish this is by passing out rat poison to a gathered group of people at the midnight mass, which is, hence the name. Hassan's son sprints to the front and is one of the first people to really try and buy into this thing fully. And he drinks the poison and he dies, and then comes back and is, trying to explain to people the things he's seeing, the things he's feeling. But it shoots up so quick. The stem shoots up so quick in him. If you've been around, this is going to seem like a tangent, but I promise you, stay with me. If you've been around people who are, fairly spiritually aware or tapped into things like that, you'll be familiar with this idea that the devil tries to mock God and copy God in this really, pathetic, I guess is the word, way. And I believe that the way of receiving the word here is a similar way that this false gospel is trying to root into the people. In the case of Hassan's son, this root shoots up so quickly in him, and eventually he realizes, after witnessing carnage, just true carnage, what they weren't prepared for is that when they came back as vampires, that they would feel the need to feed on people. And Father Paul wanted to turn people slowly, teach them how to control that habit, figure out ways to control this habit before they spread this gospel, as he wanted to call it, this false gospel. Instead, it all happens at once, starting with Hassan's son, and carnage ensues as people can't deal with the results of taking in this virus that is fanaticism. In this case, they are ravenous and they tear into other people literally, and it's an interesting way that when you get into this, when you put your fervor into something that isn't Jesus, it will lead to not only your own destruction and your own downfall, but also to that of the community around you. They literally tear into each other. And after realizing what he had done, in a very tender moment, Hassan and his son have a moment together where they're watching the sun rise, and they're doing their own prayer. And Hassan's son dies as a result of being exposed to the sunlight. But that root of fanaticism burned away with the realization of what he had really done. The third group is seed sown among the thorns. This is the one who hears the word, and the anxiety of the world and the deceitfulness of wealth choke the word, and it becomes unfruitful. I'm going to say here, this is maybe the most catch-all for how I feel about the effects of misplaced energy, misplaced fervor, misplaced belief, and vehementness. This is maybe the most umbrella category for everyone in this story. There is a character by the name of Beverly Keene. She is one of Father Paul's most devout followers. I mean, she is in on it from almost the beginning, and she's the one who honestly along the way convinces him that what he's doing is correct and that what he's doing needs to keep going. And it's not because it's true per se. It's because she needs it to be true. She wants it to be true. She spent her whole life, she believes, serving the church. As she's shown in a few ways, she's pompous and she's arrogant and she is mean. She's rude. She's not loving at all. And she honestly misuses church funds. She's a liar. Beverly Keene is, though, to herself and to others, seen as this devout Christian person. These thorns of deceitfulness of wealth in the world is what's offered to the people of the crockpot, of Crockett Island. They're promised new bodies, new health. They're promised a growing, close community, vibrance, strength. They're promised that they would be the ones to usher in the world of the new creation. And they use Revelation a lot in the show to, justify how they feel. I feel like that's an important point. They are justifying the things that they want by trying to twist what the scripture is saying. Beverly Keene believes that she is the fourth in good soil. Beverly Keene believes that the way that she has found is the right way. And that way is the right way because she found it, not because it's actually right, because it benefits her. The people of the crockpot believe that it will benefit them. And that's really at the heart of it, why they do what they do. They hurt other people. They are responsible for others being turned unwillingly. And their community is destroyed. At the end of it all, there's only two people left of their community. Lisa and Riley's younger brother, Willie. They are not necessarily, true, full believers. But there's something very important about them. They were bought into the prior, slow-burning, hard truth of their town, to the slow-burning, hard truth of the gospel. Lisa, I think, makes a particularly good example of how we should strive to be. Lisa was the victim of an unfortunate accident, as I mentioned earlier, and had every right to believe that this thing could give her really what she wanted, that what she wanted was to walk more than anything else. And now she had that ability and she had a choice to make. I can help and spread this even though it is wrong. Something about it is wrong. Or I can keep on going and keep holding on to the thing that I really wanted selfishly. Thankfully, she makes the choice to not help and make the sacrifice, the personal sacrifice for the good of others, to preserve that which was really important. Lisa, I think in many ways is our goal and represents what happens when you really heed what Jesus is saying by being that fourth soil. The soil is good. There are other things that happen in life, and the enemy will try to do things and try to distract you and try to give you things that you'll like. Things will happen in your life that will make you go the right way. You might get a new job. You might get a new something that changes the circumstances of your life in a way that makes you feel that you don't need to depend on God anymore, that makes you feel like you don't need to hold on to the plain and simple truths of Scripture anymore. But in that first bit of the parable that Jesus says, he said that root sprung up quick and died because he had no root in himself. You have to cultivate your own life. There's choices to make, and no matter how enticing, no matter how beneficial certain things seem. And I want to acknowledge that this was originally starting out as something about fanaticism, but I think honestly has morphed into something more, because I think fanaticism is too narrow of a category to hone in on the Christian life. I want all of us to be, I'm saying quote unquote fanatic about the ways of Jesus, to take the ways of Jesus to their most extreme sense, dying to self, loving others, loving God, thinking on things that are noble and good and praiseworthy. There's no law against these things. But I think that this show shows us the way that it's never really just about us, and it's never really easy to say no. We'll face temptation, we'll face perceived gifts. You'll be offered the world from a mountaintop, and it's our job and responsibility to say no. And that happens by having a recognition of the word and cultivating the good soil of the heart. In whatever way that this is packaged to y'all, man, I hope that this makes any kind of freaking sense. This is a very stream of consciousness episode, and I apologize for those of you who I lost in this episode. These monologue episodes will be more streamlined, unless I get the same kind of feeling that a different way needs to be gone and to be had. This really wasn't audible, and I hope it was in some way thought-provoking or in some way helpful. But you'll be blessed. Know you're loved.
Then with my waking thoughts, bright with thy praise, out of my stony griefs, Bethel I'll raise. So to thee, nearer to thee. Still all my song shall be, nearer, my God, to thee, nearer, my God, to thee, nearer.